in the original script was, the bus wasn't there. I wanted to bring the bus, and the producers would come have a bus there. I wanted you to drive the bus, like as a kid. And like, no, there's a museum bus, it doesn't move. Okay, so they did the bus.
Hello everyone. Hi, my name is Jacqueline Coley, and I'm editor at Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm very excited to call to the stage the director of the film we just watched, Karukoski. So as we sit down and sort of let this beautiful film sort of wash over all of us, let's start at the beginning. Let's start, you getting involved with the project and how you, I know you're a huge Tolkien fan, so this was probably like something you were hoping for.
Yeah, actually there's an intriguing destiny between and Tolkien on his stories, and when I encountered stories, which the first one was Lord of the Rings, it was age 12, 13, I think, teacher, you have to get a backstory. In Finland, Tolkien is of course known because he loved the Finnish mythology, Kalevala, and he loved the Finnish language. So in a small country like Finland, one loves you, a famous person, they think you're almost Finnish. Like, his grandparents must be Finnish, and we should give him the citizenship. And so in school, I think there was a fantasy course or something that you choose between one mythology, and I think there was choices between Norse mythology or Lord of the Rings or some other book, maybe Beowulf. And then the teacher gave me the book and said, I think you're like this. I was very alone. You write an essay about it. I was very alone. I was bullied. I was growing at that time without a father, and that feeling of an outsider we had moved, and then suddenly this story just captivated. It kind of gave me an escape from my misery, and I of course became a fan and started playing Dungeons and Dragons board games, and creating my own stories through that. I would say that it's very deep rooted in him. I mean, in me, he's very deep rooted in me. I think in fast forward 30 years later, I met ArcLight, and we had discussed a couple of years earlier about different projects, and then they sent the script to my agent, and it was a dream come true. Oddly, there's this destiny, which is at the same time when I encountered these stories at the age of 12, growing without a father. We were very poor. We didn't have running water at that time. My mom, and then I look at this person. He's experiencing, relatable emotions at that time, the same age, at the age of 12. It felt as a wheel, like I need to tell the story. And of course, the script was sent to me is quite different. We then shaped it and rewrote it, and here we are.
You said from the beginning the script was sort of narrowed down, which I think is sort of the brilliance of the film. It doesn't feel like it needs to say everything. It just has to tell this one part of his life in a complete way. So talk about that though too, like deciding that obviously we're going to do it this first part, but trying to weave in the stuff that essentially is who he is. The little touches of the Lord of the Rings that are kind of peppered throughout the film.
Well, the thing is, when you do a biopic or a real life story, you have to find what is the kind of theme of that character. And somehow, what was brilliant about the script that the writers, they said it changed a lot, but the writers have found this time frame of youth and the themes of friendship and love. And then the theme that we kind of brought into it, or what I wanted to bring later, was the thought of can art change the world? And it can, of course, in a societal way sometimes, but also just in an individual way. Like for him and for his fellows, art was a change, or it was something that moved them. And so you start building the character through those themes that you choose, and then everything has to be somehow interweaving the themes that you chosen. So all the elements there, whether it's visual or it's a sound element, are coming from those themes, or the scenes chosen are coming from those. And when you mentioned ideas, how do you bring Lord of the Rings or Silmarillion or Hobbit, these mythologies in this film, the one thing that you have to remember is that he hasn't written the books yet. So the one book that he's kind of writing in his mind and generating is actually the Silmarillion, which is kind of his main legendary. So most of the elements actually in the film are from the Silmarillion. And then there's some Lord of the Rings, because of course ideas are coming that he would then later use 30 years later. and The Hobbit, of course, which he is also building at the time. But how do you bring it in? How do you bring it in into the film? So you can't go like, oh, I love The Hobbit, so I have the kids running on the grass and their feet a little bit, grassy and all. It's an idea of The Hobbit. But that didn't happen that way. He didn't really have like one-on-one inspiration. He's named a few, like when he did dance in the forest, that then inspired him to write Baron Luthien, one of the Silmarillion stories. But he hasn't named, he's actually being kind of very concrete that there are no direct allegories. But when you look at the mythologies, when you look at the stories, you can find that the experiences as he felt are kind of the stories. So what happens? Long answers.
I'll love listening to you talk about this movie, honestly.
But what happens then, you have to choose like what is in this. You first build a story. So basically, we have a script with almost without any fantasy elements. And then I would have to start building, knowing my Tolkien knowledge, which are the mythological elements that he would have felt emotionally in the sea. And then you bring in there. For instance, the battle between good and evil, it's a very Christian element, but also if you look at war, it's an experience. So we mentioned this example. He, as a naive young boy, sees this vision of Sigurd. Of course, it's not the Sigurd how it's written, but kind of a white knight, an even more naive or evocative mythological white knight. Then when he sees bloodshed and killing, and his mind gets corrupted more and more, that same white knight becomes a fallen knight. But it's internal. All that is internal. So evil is taking over his mind while he's in war. And this is something that we see very much in his mythologies. And then there's an eternal battle between good and evil with the knights. So all this would come like very, very layered from him, who he is, and then how he uses them in the mythologies.
Yeah, I think the other thing you already talked about too is the kind of like central themes of not just him as a person, but the film, and one of them is friendship. I mean, the four young boys and how they go to war together, and we see what happens at the end of the film, who comes back, and those that come back, they come back different. But talk about casting those four and getting those actors, because they have them in different ages, and how you kind of how you build your fellowship.
Well, we started with Tolkien, and Nick was the first one I met, and he was top of my list, and the studio had just worked with him in favor, so they had a lot of love towards him, and then they threw Nick's name, I threw Nick's name over, let's meet Nick first. And I didn't have a script at that time, so we would just meet and talk about, I didn't have a script I wanted to shoot, so I didn't want to send a script that isn't, that's going to be the scene, and blah, blah, so you want to just meet him. As a person, he felt very Tolkien when I met him. There's an intellect in him. It's very goofy. He's a very family man, family oriented. There are a lot of traits in him, warmth. There's a lot of traits in him that feel like Tolkien had. So just after that, I just felt it has to be Nick. And then the difficulties, of course, matching the boys. We discussed this earlier. How do you find a young Nicholas Hoult in England? So that was hundreds and hundreds of takes and auditions, and we. Just basically at the last moment, Harry Gilby sent a self-tape. And I'm like, he looks like Nick, he's can act, brilliant there, so I'm Tolkien. And then it was kind of just auditions, and you had to build kind of the physicality. So I would have these rehearsals where I had both the young TC players and the old TC players together. And you would rehearse how they walk together, how, which hand is in the pocket of each and every character, and there's looks and has this, and different kind of movements in their lives, so the match is much unnoticeable. And then you start building emotion on the physicality.
The other side of it, again, if we're not going to talk about, we talk about the friendship, it's the love story between Edith and Tolkien, and sort of, I guess we get our happy ending there, because I think with the friendship aspect, even though they're obviously close friends, it's kind of heartbreaking at the end to see where they end up. But Edith and Tolkien get their happy ending, and I think it's because of the chemistry between Nick and Lily and how we kind of fall in love with them as a couple. So talk about pairing those two together and what Lily brought to it.
Well, the beauty of course, is that as Edith inspired the story of Baron Luthien, which is an immortal love story from his books, a mortal man falls in love with an elven princess. And so there's this, and it's a forbidden love story. So you look at it, things have happened, so all that I hope puts into the books as investment of direct inspirations, but it was as factual. Father Francis forbade them to meet for 3 years, and then somebody writes a book where there's a forbidden love story, where basically King Thingol, the Lord forbids them of not being together, and it imposes Tolkien on an impossible task to get one of the silver medals from Morgoth, Lord of Evil, which kind of we see the first idea of Lord Morgoth at the end of the battle scene. And that's an impossible task for Tolkien, of course, getting into Oxford. You have to get into Oxford, you have to become that so impossible task. So Thingol, Father Francis, there's many things there that he's used in his life that he doesn't necessarily think at the moment when he's writing, but it kind of comes, there's always a subconscious element when you write. And with Lily and with Nick, it's like, as a director, you always hope that they fall in love in real life. It would always help, so you don't have to direct them. But, they just had a baby and they had a wonderful relationship, and I don't know, Lily's marital status, I don't ask. I saw it in the tablet because of the
I was like, okay, we're going to make news here.
No, I met Nick's girlfriend and the baby, and they seem happy. So, okay, this is not going to happen real for love. So how do you like play? And I think a lot of the scenes is just giving time there, really talented actors, and just giving them time and kind of find the way to play the scene, and yeah.
There you go.
And then I don't know, it's just making love happen on the screen is weird. I never know how the actors do it. You put them in the scene and they look like they're totally in love, and then they're gonna be a couple, and then like, Karukoski done. Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I have a really heavy day at work. I never understand that part.
Yeah, writers don't do that. We wear our heart on our sleeve. It's like, oh, she broke my heart. I couldn't do it either. I'm going to definitely throw it to the audience for you guys to ask questions, so please get yourself ready. I'm going to ask a couple more, and then we'll move on. I didn't ask you about this the last time, and I can't believe I did, because yes, there's beautiful cinematography and there's costumes, and we watched this beautiful sweeping love story, but underneath it, playing literally quietly but moving so much, is the score that Thomas did. And it's just, it's a quiet element to it. And I think with every composer and every director, there's this like pre-production meeting, or maybe it's a post-production meeting, where you're trying to articulate an emotion or a sound or a movement that you want the score to communicate. So talk to me about like what that meeting was with Tom.
Well, the whole film is in a way a love letter to Tolkien. You mentioned the costumes. And everything there in the film, from the costumes.
Take that one, and I'll take that one.
Yeah, that's right. Everything there, from the costume to the wallpapers, everything is kind of Tolkien-esque. So everything is found somehow through his stories or through elements of his life. So it's kind of the small layers from sound, everything's thought to draw Tolkien. So that's of course the thought with music. So you go, 14 Thomas nominee Thomas Newman, like no biggie, and then this guy we send him the script, and he can choose his project, and he really liked the script, and then he had seen all the films and liked them, and then we described them, discussed, and what you couldn't really see in the script, of course, is that these visions and thoughts, because they were kind of this head, this balding head, and I was still storyboarding them and creating them while I was editing and kind of enhancing. So I was explaining this idea of kind of going into his mind. So it's a story of creation. It's also a story of friendship and love, but it's also a story of creation. He kind of picked up on that. Okay, I get it. It's a story of creation. And those who know his work, the Silmarillion, his legendary, his world is created with the music of Dainur. So basically, Dainur are spirits created by Almighty God, Erwilvatar, and then the spirits sing in harmony and an instrument arrives, an additional instrument arrives. So slowly and slowly, the world is created through these themes. And then there's a lot of the Elves sing. The Elves sing, and they take you to the mythological place. So we talked a lot about Elven singing. We talked about a lot of like how important kind of music and sounds and words and sounds from an unearthly place for this. And Thomas picked up on that. Okay, let's bring some Gothic words, Celtic words into the choir. So they actually, every word that we hear sung by the choir is somehow meaningful. So, for instance, when war is declared, the choir sings. When the war is declared, the choir sings a word "offermod," and that word I think is Old English, and it derives from a Norse language. The word, and it was very meaningful to Tolkien because it meant the word came from a story when the English were fighting against the Vikings, and then they very proudly they could have taken easily the Vikings if they would have waited, but they didn't wait. They just ran to it, and the Vikings just obliterated it. So the word is very profoundly coming from the stupidity or the pride of going to war. So there's a very deep-rooted thought in every context there, in every different layers. And Thomas was, he's a profound artist who thinks about his layers all the time. And we worked. He himself and his team told me that it is probably one of the longest. The bonds tend to be very long, but this one is the longest films ever. We worked for the music for a year. So even before the film had been cut, I would send him clips, and I would be at his home, and we would look at the clips and we'd try to find emotions slowly. We started in January, and I was still editing, and I finished editing sometime in the summer, and then when we were doing sound, I think we finished the film, we finished mixed in December. It's almost a year for him. And I think what is intriguing about Thomas is that he brings these instruments, and I was like, what is that instrument? Oh, no, don't tell me. Because I want to imagine it coming from Middle Earth, the instrument. He finds these art instruments and people and singers and sounds that I've never heard of. And he would bring this instrument to Abbey Road, which is basically a table. And there's a woman sitting and playing the instrument like this. And it has this oddest sound. And then when he plays, I just thought it brings something. And then we get excited when that okay, let's add a little bit to this thing. Suddenly it becomes a sound of his inner voice. So it was one of the most amazing, experiences I've ever had, working with Thomas Newman. And it was just there is not an accident the guy has 14 Oscar nominations.
If you haven't, go check out Thomas Newman on Spotify. It is great writing music, I will add. So I'm going to turn it out here. Does anyone have a question? Okay.
Can you talk about filming the scene behind, when they do use the opera dress and they're listening to the
So she's asking if you can break down the opera scene in back.
Yes, it's actually one of my favorite scenes, and there's two reasons to it. And one is that it is a homage to Tolkien, the scene, because sometimes as this film takes artistic license in years and factual events, we change them, we dramatize them so that the emotion comes out. And but there was this scene where you want to show the true nature of the character, the emotional truth of the character, who the character is. So I read these stories. I would take in months and months and months of research and read everything, listen to everything. I read this piece that in Oxford he used to dress up as a knight and then scare people, go behind corners, overboard, shouting different odd words. And so I tried to bring that in Oxford, but it felt like a bit, as often that happens, it felt like it's a part of an encyclopedia or Wikipedia or whatever. So how do I bring it to the film, the homage to the character, so it's true to the character? So then I invented the scene where they play out the roles, and it basically does the same thing as it does in Oxford, but in a more emotional and more dramatical way. And it was just awful to shoot. It's narrow, it's cold, and I was like, oh, it's not gonna work, not gonna work. It's really fast, and we're really shooting in a rush. And then my editor put it together, and when you're editing, you're in depression, like full-on depression all the time, because you're thinking the worst director ever. And I said several times to my editor, like he's edited all my films, I said several times, I'm like, this shit? Really this shit? It's really nice making my last film with you. And you just utter this world on a daily basis, like, I think I can find a rope, I can hang myself. That's not a good idea, it's a joke. And then what if you die and then Mark's not left?
This is very morbid editing
process. Editing is very morbid altogether, because you're thinking about suicide on a daily basis. But now I have kids, so there's a reason to live. But But basically, then they showed the first cut of the film, and this scene, until that scene, I could just see mistakes, my mistakes, like, because it's not yet there, it's not there. It's still like, that's what editing is. It takes time to get the rhythm, the pacing. And then I saw this scene, I was like, at least I got one right. It just felt wonderful, and I felt that it's just so important for me.
It was magical.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, thank you for this movie. It was absolutely incredible, I felt. And I'm a huge, fan of Tolkien. Lord of the Rings is my favorite books, of all time. And so I came in kind of with, the eye of like, okay, I hope, it measured, and it, absolutely did. And I was curious, has his family been able to see, have you had any contact with them as far as the movie?
They haven't seen the film. I approached them to show it to them, but they, I approached to send an email like I would like to show the film and just be there in the room and explain why it's more artistic license, because they did an announcement saying that they had nothing to do with this film, but they haven't seen it yet. So I'm like, yeah, I would love to show it to you, and I'm not seeking for an approval, not that. I would just love to show it to them and explain what certain artistic license has been done. You usually try to not work with the family, because often that I usually start writing so-called winner's history. It's even though they would be nicest and kindest estate ever, you start servicing them to become your friends, and you start servicing them and not necessarily the dramatic, the drama of the film. And but yeah, hopefully one day I can sit down with them, and maybe hopefully one day sit with the professor and ask him. The funny thing is that Tolkien himself said that he's not a fan of biographies of artists. I think it's partly because he thinks that life is quite boring. And I would love to sit in with him and, somewhere in a pub, wherever, at the top of the club, on top of a cloud, and ask him, now when I really, dramatize the story a bit, does the story now work?
That's good. Anyone else have a question? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was curious, did you have a scene or a moment when you were reading the script as you were developing it and as you filmed it where you were like, if I don't get this right, the entire movie falls apart and I've let everybody down?
The kind of dividing scene, I don't know how to translate this in English. I think not that many scenes stayed from the script I read as they are, and as the film now is, because we rewrote 4 or 5 drafts. But they're one of the scenes that almost is word from the script I read is the stick. They're talking about the parental, and I think Stephen was the one who wrote it, Stephen Beresford, and he's very snappy, it's like English language, he's a theater writer. And I don't think we changed one word of that, and I felt, the reason why I felt so pivotal about the boyish energy that I loved about the draft I read at that point. And, it's one of those feelings, I still don't watch the film and want to be with those boys. And I still remember the sensation, the element that I kind of read and understood what it's about, like what is Tolkien about when I read that scene. And these are young actors who always risk, but they had an acting coach, I rehearsed with them, the acting coach rehearsed with them, we worked for a lot of time to get that rhythm and love and the live. That's one thing that I remember kind of from the script, if you meant that, like, for the first reading experience. But then so many of the scenes have been kind of something that I passionately want to do and build them. Like, for instance, the war scenes. We talking earlier that there's not, the first script I read was more historic, more factual. And what happens often then is like, fact is not drama. So the war was the same thing, all the scenes kind of felt, okay, these had happened in the war, but I don't get it. Like, we are watching, we're watching a historic perspective, understanding was in the war, so how do we make it I don't get emotion. So I actually approach it from another angle. I approach it from an angle that, what if it's all a dream? What is in Southampton hospital dreaming about the war? What is the emotion it takes? What is memory? So the emotion, of course, is probably, which he probably felt, was the disappointment not being able to save his friends. And And so, for that, in that sense, the kind of the war as one scene, as a one linear dreamy scene, was something for me that if that works, it will elevate the film. It doesn't work, I gotta what you call a pancake.
That's great. I think we have time for a couple more. Anyone else? Well, I'll ask you this one. Since you brought up the friends, and I don't want to be like too tongue-in-cheek with it, but there's some allusions to Tolkien's best friend, and how much was just straight fiction, how much was licensed, how much was alluded from other historical facts.
Well, we talk about Jeffrey Smith possibly being gay. One of his writers, Stephen Beresford, is gay, and he read all of Jeffrey's letters and the poems, and he's like 100% sure that he's gay. And he's written a film called Pride. But we can't, of course, claim that. He's a real life person, so we want to claim because he's not officially. I think it was only the boys who left the war without a girlfriend. I think Weissman didn't have a girlfriend before war. Gilson just found a girlfriend just before war. Weissman been married post-war. But so there's kind of hints in there, but you can't claim because he didn't say, himself say it. And of course, 2019, this shouldn't be an issue. But I also don't want to make it so that if he was gay, I don't want to make him heterosexual, because that will also be false towards his legacy, possible legacy. So how we played it was so that it's on the middle. And you can't say that, so I can't remember how he directed Anthony, but he's going to be a superstar, by the way, Anthony, who was acting Jeffrey. But we kind of played it so that those who want to interpret it through him being gay can do that. So it kind of plays the homage to him if he was gay. But those who don't, for me, it's like intimacy at a friendship level. It like becomes so close with someone. And it's true that in Oxford, I kind of found that out, and there was some, which I love so much, is that when I did the research, I met all experts that I had the possibility to meet and read everything, listened to everything. And then one expert will say this, and the other one expert will say this, and people contradict each other. So, we had the script where he becomes, his best friend in Oxford, and then the expert say, no, Weissman was his best friend. Then post-shoot, because I can't remember where I found this, and then post-shoot there's a maker of Middle-earth called Exhibition, which is approved by the family. So there's more information there than you would think. And there it says why Smith became his best friend in Oxford. So you have to guess. So if his best friend, often there is a level of intimacy that is not necessarily romantic, but it becomes so close that it might even feel sexual, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you are, you are desiring the person, but there's a connection. And we kind of played it through that. There's a connection that these people understand each other, and the whole world around them is, and it's a lovely, beautiful story.
Anyone else, real quick? Okay.
One more. Did you have access to the original manuscripts and drawings?
No, the publications, like what is published. And it's really when you read these letters and you look at the illustrations, regarding the material, I went to art schools. I analyze a lot through like what's the temper on your lines, or what is the colors you're using in times of your life. And there's a lot of darkness in his young years in the illustrations. A lot of pictures of full forest and the forest dark, and there's a corridor kind of feels like it going down the tube, and there's a lot of emotion in the illustrations. And then secondly, when you read letters that have been published, you have to read what is not in the letters. There's not one letter that's been published that he talks about his mother. There's not one letter where he talks about his poverty. And he was very poor, and a lot of experts that we met said that one of the reasons why he's infamous of working so hard, the myth is that, he loved being a professor. But a lot of the experts have analyzed that it's about poverty. That he felt that like in this film, the theme of poverty, me being poor when I was young, and being poor. What happens to when you're poor as a young, you never want to be poor again. So he would work double the shifts as a professor to make sure that his kids will not have the same that he had. And those are things that you have to look through. Why doesn't he speak at all about it? Because often, as we know, the things we don't speak about are the things that we don't want to, confront anymore.
I want to end on this one because I feel he was such a complex man, but a private man and a quiet man. But as I would say, Tolkien superfan here, what were you surprised to learn about him? What would folks be surprised to know about him and his personality that was a little bit under wraps?
I think there's an idealized image of him, a very protected image of him. Often, when you read the biographies, or they're written from fan perspective, and that was the picture I had, because that's the one that you're kind of sent when the public book is released. He's there as with C.S. Lewis debating about Christianity and elves and the Eagle and Child in Oxford. And I read when I was growing in Finland that these elitist, privileged people sitting rich professors, right? Then you find this story that he actually stole the bus in Oxford. He actually, during Oxford, he himself said that at that time I didn't really practice basically none or very little religion, and I was a bit merry. So as a young man, this image is never told. He stole the bus. He had a pub fight, which we wanted to shoot, but the same thing happened. But he actually did come problems with the police. And then he told this story of this man. You understand that he's a troubled young man looking over the past to understand how that certain trauma comes out in different ways. So that was a big surprise, that this kind of side of him was found. It's not just an dude in a pipe talking about else. And it's a funny story I wanted to actually bring into the film. So when he had a pub fight, so I combined stealing the bus and ending up problems with the police. So there was I think the original script was, the bus wasn't there. I wanted to bring the bus, and the producers, we can't have a bus there. I wanted you to drive the bus, as a kid. And there's a museum bus, it doesn't move. Okay, so they steal the bus. so thinking of the script. Changed. There was a pub fight. I brought the pub fight in after I heard about it, because it was not documented that much. And then okay, we have a pub fight. We were already shooting. We were already in the location scouting for the pub, and some stuff. And then I read about this bus stealing. I was like, we gotta change this to the bus.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have it both. We don't have the time or screen time. Producers said, no buses. We're gonna drive the bus from wherever. And so anyway, so in real life, when he comes out of jail, he comes out very late. The courts are closed. So in Oxford, there's I think it's called Swiss Wall or Swiss Cottage. So you can climb that wall. So Tolkien, being the tree climber he was as a young man, would climb to get into the court. These 3-4, floors. And then, open the window. It's a very Peter Sellers moment, right? Oh, excuse me, sorry, just go through. So the Swiss wall is, of course, protected, so we couldn't do that. So I wanted to pick the wall, and the way he comes, into the court, and the wall wasn't that high, it was maybe 3 meters, and Nick is almost 3 meters. And then, okay, he's going to pick this, he's going to climb this wall, and I think this is quite easy, the wall to climb. And then, we have this health and safety and stuntmen go like, no, he needs a harness, and we gotta put a mattress here, and if you put a harness on a tweed jacket, you're gonna show, even though you're moving, it's gonna show that he's having a harness, it's gonna look weird. And I'm like, he's the beast from X-Men. Guys, I think he can climb this wall. And then debating, no, there has to be a mattress, what if he falls, and the debate, and eventually just climb the wall, on the top of the wall. Guys, if I can climb, the beast can climb the wall. And then I can't remember. Then for some reason I then rewrote it so that I think it was just so much hassle. Fine, he doesn't climb the wall. Fine, Jeffrey will be there, because the idea was that Jeffrey will be waiting inside the court, and then fine, I'll put Jeffrey there. But it's always like something doesn't happen, and something. Then the script change, and you let go. I've learned through the years, when you let go of something you want to do, you find something new. So now when I look at it, I'm never going to miss the wall, right? I'm never going to miss the wall, but there's something beauty of now Jeffrey waiting him there. It works with that location, which is you win some when you lose some.
And on that note, never tell Beast he can't climb a wall. Seriously. I want to thank you, Tommy, for the conversation.
Thank you.
All of you for staying and thank you for